Live from the J.C. Newman Cigar Studios in Boston, Massachusetts, welcome to the Smokin Tabacco Show with your hosts, Matt Tobacco and Smokin Nicole.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Smokin Tabacco Show. My name is Matt Tobacco from SmokinTabacco.com, and I'm not joined by any of the Smokin Tabacco team tonight because, once again, John Carney is not with us as he is traveling on the road, as he can be commonly found nowadays. Hopefully he'll be back soon. And Nicole is actually on the other side of the room in a makeshift studio setup where she is live with McAuliffe and KMA for a women's roundtable. So she's live, but she's over there. So I am actually holding down the fort solo tonight, but luckily for me, I have a pretty cool guest with me tonight. I have the one and only Glen Case of Kristoff Cigars. Glen, how are you?
Greetings, my friend. It's great seeing you.
It's great to see you. Last time I saw you, I think, was PCA last summer. So
Right.
it's great to see you. I did see the Kristoff team, well, part of the Kristoff team at TPE. Two of my favorite people in this industry, Johnny Vegas and Jared Trudeau. Love those guys to death. Seriously, it was so much fun. As a whole, too, one thing I have to tell you is your whole team, the Kristoff team, everyone, like, they're fantastic. They're great people. They're friendly. They know their shit. They know how to sell cigars. They know how to smoke cigars. They know how to talk cigars. They are just such a well-rounded team. And anytime I get to spend any time with any of them, it's always a pleasure. And I really mean that.
Yeah, Matthew, I appreciate that. And you're right. I mean, I've got an amazing team. And one of the mantras I've always kind of lived by in terms of my professional career is, if you think you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
But so I'm surrounded by incredibly intelligent people. And it's really family. If you ask any of them, we're part of if you're part of Kristoff, you're part of the Kristoff family. So anyone that new comes on board, we fly them to our office here outside of Chicago. My wife makes dinner for them. They stay at her house. And so that's sort of the orientation. So we embrace them as family. So it's great. And I'm truly blessed.
That's a really nice way to bring someone into the company. You literally make them feel like family. Not just like it's just this other job and you got to show up and like, no, like you're going to be here. You're part of the family. Such a nice touch that you guys have. And, you know, your brand is an interesting one. It's one of the first brands that I discovered when I got into premium cigars. Kristoff was one of those first brands. My first premium cigar was a CLE, no, not CLE, an Aroa, the first 20 Colorado box press. But I think my second cigar was Pissed Off Kristoff. And that was the first box of cigars I ever bought. The Pissed Off Kristoff Churchill. First time I had that cigar, I was like, wow. And this is when I was still just kind of figuring out what was what. And someone gave that to me. It was at Two Guys Smoke Shop. And I was like, oh my God, this cigar is amazing. I love that cigar. It was tasty. It was definitely strong. I loved the Churchill size. And I smoked one in the lounge. And then I said, okay, I'm going to have another one because it was so good. And I had another one. And then I said, I'm going to buy the box. So I bought a box. I went home and I had a third one that night.
Nice. You jumped in with both feet, my friend. That's like you said, it's a strong cigar.
Yeah, I did.
Mouthfeel, it's very smooth, right? Savory. Yeah. But it's about 10, 15 minutes in, and you're like, all right, I'm starting to feel this.
And I made the mistake of smoking 3 Churchills in one day.
That's a lot.
And I was at the time a new cigar smoker, so my body was really not adjusted to that much nicotine and the strength, and I was halfway through the third stick, and I was getting the sweats. I mean, I was starting to feel like, wow. I felt it.
Right. There's the meat sweats, and then there's the cigar sweats, right? So that one will give you the cigar sweats.
Oh, it did. It did. But it's still a great cigar. It's probably one of my favorite Kristoff cigars. So many of them. You know, it's such a different brand. You know, the flavors, it's a great quality, but like the flavors, the blends, just some of the ideas behind some of the blends, truly unique, different. The Shade Grown is a great cigar. That's definitely one of my favorite milder cigars. A little bit of the light sweetness to it. I've said it time and time again. That's a cigar I recommend to people a lot when they're starting out too. I want to kind of ease them into it. Nothing too crazy. That Kristoff Shade Grown is a great cigar. Tonight I am actually smoking the Kristoff Habano.
Okay.
Here, great cigar. What are you
Nice.
smoking?
I'm smoking the Grojo Limitada.
That's a good cigar too. That's
Yeah.
a good one. Yep.
That one's done very well for us.
You know, one thing I noticed about Kristoff is I don't know if all of them are. I think all of them are, with the exception of like the Woodlawn. But most of the cigars usually have the shaggy foot, and then I'm gonna try to show this. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but it always has that nice pigtail on the cap. It seems to be like the signature Kristoff touch in terms of the roll of the cigar. Any particular reason for that? Any influence behind that in terms of that method of rolling the majority of the cigars that way?
Yeah, I mean, so that you're right. That's one of our signatures is the uncut foot and the pigtail. Kind of doing some research when I first started the company, old Cuban cigars, that was pretty common to have that fuma or the pigtail off the top, the uncut foot. And the uncut foot, it really, because the wrappers, we double and triple ferment. We do that with all of our tobacco. But when you first light that, you get that blast of flavor from the wrapper, which is where most of your flavor comes from. So it's, again, it's just, it's kind of our unique signature. Plus there's some benefits to it with flavor and the aesthetics of it. It's different. Try to be different.
Yeah, I mean, with the uncut foot, I mean, that's a good point too. A lot of the times when it is done, you know, you will notice a difference, especially on the first light. You get that blast of the wrapper tobacco because you have that abundance right at the end that flares right up. It's one of the first things you taste right when you take that first puff in. It burns out and it quickly goes away, but it's a nice quick rush of flavor right off the bat. You can really taste that wrapper right away. And some companies do it, some companies don't. Some people have that the shaggy foot, they have the unfinished foot, they have the torch foot. Everyone does things a little bit differently. But I noticed it was very consistent across most, if not all, of the cigars in the line too, which I thought was interesting because, like I said, some brands will do it, but not all their cigars. Kristoff seems to do it on almost all their cigars, which I thought was a really interesting touch. We kind of lightly touched or kind of mentioned the beginning of Kristoff. But why don't you tell us about that? How did you get into the industry and kind of, you know, for those maybe who don't know, how did you get into the industry and what was the inspiration behind starting Kristoff?
Right. So I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. How's that? So I spent 19 years in the corporate world, all in finance. The last 9 years of my career, I was an executive at one of the top 3 banks in the country. And I just got tired of the politics and the bureaucracy, all the nonsense. And at the time, my wife, Terry, was an independent broker selling for multiple manufacturers. And so we ended up joining forces, doing that together. And about 6 months later, one of our largest manufacturers said, "Hey, you guys did a great job. You got a product everywhere in your territory and you're fired." I'm like, wait a second. I looked at my wife. I'm like, what is that about? She said, "Welcome to the brokerage business." So as a broker, it's pretty typical. New manufacturers, they start off with brokers because it's 100% commission. There's no overhead expense. And you only pay them if they sell. So once they build up the market, they can afford to go in-house with their own sales reps and they let them go. And so when that happened, and that was only 6 months into us working together, I said, I can't live that way. And she was used to that. She was okay with building a brand, losing a brand, finding a new brand, building it, losing it. So she's like, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to start making my own cigars then." So a gentleman from the Dominican, Rolando Villanil, had flown to Chicago for the first time. And the purpose of the meeting was for him to ask us to sell his cigars. And I said, "It's not going to happen." He's like, "Why not?" And I said, "Well, because I'm going to start making my own cigars. I'm looking to buy or build a factory." So that conversation quickly turned into, my friend, come to the factory in the Dominican in Santiago, take a tour. If you like what you see, you can blend your cigars, design your packaging, and I'll oversee production. So I went down 2 weeks later, and I said, all right, let's give this a shot. So that's the real quick short story of how that all started. And the name Kristoff didn't come out until probably about 10 months after I started the company. I started it as exclusive cigars. And, blending is an art. There's no science behind it. So there was a lot of trial and error. I got lucky with a couple of different blends that did kind of okay. But it wasn't until the first Kristoff that I came out with, which, by the way, is named after our son, Christopher. And all of a sudden, the first Kristoff took off like wildfire. And then I came out with another Kristoff, and it took off. And so eventually, as I started hiring brokers throughout the country, I rebranded the company as Kristoff Cigars, and anything that wasn't doing well, I either got rid of or I just rebranded it as Kristoff. So that's kind of the short story behind Kristoff and how it got started. So that was back in 2004.
Wow, 2004. So you're coming up on almost 20 years now, which is a good amount of time. In your experience now in the cigar industry, owning a brand, running a brand, seeing the way things work versus maybe your former life in the corporate world. What's like the biggest thing, in your opinion as a brand owner, you look at the industry, whether it's something good, whether it's bad, what's like the one thing that, you wish you could change about the industry from your perspective?
I love the industry. Let me start off by saying that the industry is it's a big family, right? You hear others talk about it, Carlito and Rocky, and it's for the outsider. I think for the end consumer, they think it's this huge industry, but we're all one big family, and it's a very tight knit community. So that's the one thing I absolutely love. The one thing that's been keeping me up at night for the last probably 7 years is obviously FDA. That's one thing I wish I could change, that they just stayed out of it and we get categorized as something else and it's unregulated, but we're on the radar. So it's a continued fight. And I've gone to the Hill a few times, not nearly as much as a lot of other people. Some of the what I call the leaders and the kings in this industry have done an amazing job fighting for us and the cause. So that's probably the one thing I would change. But otherwise, it's a social industry. This is the one thing that brings everyone together, right? I don't care how much you make or what you do for a living. You go into a cigar shop and everyone's equal. It's the ultimate equalizer. So I love it. It's just a great industry.
Yeah, I know it is. It's a small, tight-knit industry too, and the biggest thing that this industry faces, the FDA. You hit it right on the head. It really is. And today, and now we were going to go into it. We did start late. Unfortunately, we had some technical issues, and Glen does have a little bit of a time constraint, so it's going to be a quicker show. But so we really don't have time to get into this right now. But definitely on the Spare Note show next weekend, you can expect a long section of it. But obviously, most people know, if you haven't heard by now, the NASEM case study on premium cigars has come out today. And it's a little complicated. It's kind of long, so like I said, we won't have time to really get into it now. But the consensus being, for the most part, that part of that result was that, yes, the FDA should consider premium cigars as their own entity away from other tobacco products, which is a good thing. That's what we've been asking for. That's what the PCA has been fighting for. That's what we've all been hoping for is, hey, like, if you are going to get into us, you are going to regulate us, look at us differently. We're not the same as everyone. We're not the same as cigarettes and machine-made products. Premium handmade cigars are a very different entity, and we should be treated differently as such, respectfully, of course, because it's just not the same. Small win there. There's a lot of other moving parts to that, though, that, again, we'll get into at a later time. But I do, while I have my soapbox here, I do highly recommend we anyone who's listening or watching at home, you try to read up on that a little bit. Try to educate yourself. That was actually our McAuliffe news story segment for the night, but I actually glossed right over that part. I feel like I'm all off balance now because the show started late, and just when you get into technical stuff with the show, it throws you for a loop because then your mind you leave that mental preparation of the conversation you're about to have, the questions you're going to ask, because now you've gone to this place where it's like, what browser are we using? Why is this browser not working? Why are the settings not here? And you just lose it all. There's like a magic that it just dissipates, and you lose the mojo. And I apologize. I have been shaken tonight, but that's okay. I'm trying to get there. But I'm also up here alone. I don't have Nicole to help balance me out. So I'm in unfamiliar territory right now as the podcast host. This is just not like me. So I totally missed on that
It's all
one.
good, Matthew. Relax, my friend.
I
As
know.
we say in the Dominican, tranquilo, tranquilo.
I'm one of those people, like, I really like, it's got to be organized. Things are got to be the right way. And when it all falls apart, I'm like, I'm like trying to like pull all the pieces back. So like I had said before, last time I saw you was PCA last year. It was great to see you guys there. There was a lot of people who did show. It was a smaller show than years past, but a lot of people came. You guys were still there. Had a nice big booth, great booth. Not really exhibiting many new things as most manufacturers weren't. I think last year was a year of kind of just meeting with customers and retailers and just catching up with everyone. There hadn't been a show in 2 years at that point,
Right.
with the pandemic and everything that was going on with that. So, but again, it was great to see you guys. You guys are attending PCA 2022 this year.
Yes.
And tell me a little bit about what you guys are working on for that show, what we can expect to see at that show from Kristoff, anything new, anything different?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So we're really focusing on kind of the basics. We might come out with another one or two Vitolas within the existing line, but um, because of the pandemic and because of the supply chain issues, it's been a challenge in terms of keeping up with inventory. And the industry is going through another kind of mini boom, right? So we're asked this a lot last year at the show, saying, what's new? And it's like, look, we're trying to keep up with production on our existing stuff. Our factory, like most factories, were shut down for 4 months, and then after they reopened, it was at about 50% capacity because of COVID issues. But now we are working 6 days a week, manufacturing cigars, full capacity, and like many manufacturers, we still have some supply issues, but we're getting caught up, and so that's why we're kind of limiting our approach to new blends for the show, just to keep the current demand, keeping up with current demand of our existing blends. But yeah, you had mentioned the booth last year. Yeah, we have the same big booth, and a lot of manufacturers downscaled, right? They were downsized and much simpler. So for this year, we're actually going to downscale. So we'll see how that goes. It's the same great product, the same quality, the consistency, etc. But it's we're going to have a scaled down booth.
How much smaller will the booth be?
So last year we had, I've got to do the math here, 12 booths. We're going to 8, and we're not going to have the big pillars and, overhead banners and that sort of thing. So we're going to test this out, see how it goes. Just like a lot of people did last year, right? And they still had the same number of customers showing up, if not more. So it's really about expense management, if I'm being honest with you, because that's not a cheap show for anyone. It's expensive for us to be there. I mean, we're flying in all of our sales reps from all over the country. You've got hotel expenses, food expenses, booth expenses, etc. So yeah, we're going to see how it goes, but we'll be there.
Yeah, no, and it's great to see you guys there. But I think you made a good point, and kind of still a little early into that pre-PCA pre-game season where we talk about what we expect and this and that. But um, it's an interesting topic, and it's nice to have that conversation with the manufacturers when we can. But you're right. And a lot of people talk about TPE versus PCA, and yeah, TPE is a smaller show for the premium cigar industry. Um, when you just consider the premium cigars and not all the other stuff that's there. So yeah, I mean it's a cheaper show. Um, a lot of manufacturers have commented on that. The other difference being that TPE is a for-profit show, and the PCA show, the money does go to a good place, but yeah, it is a lot to spend. And as much as that is good and it's good for the industry, when you are running a business and you have to think about the costs of all of the other things involved, then you have to pay for that booth. Yeah, you're right. It's a cost management decision. But and you're right. Last year we did see a lot of downsizing with a lot of brands. I think a lot of brands just didn't know what to expect, and it was definitely a small show, really, really small show. I'm anticipating that this year the show will start to kind of grow back a little bigger. There's some other issues, with PCA and the trade show that it's not really a secret. So those things will be interesting to how that plays out. But I think regardless of that, I think that the trade show will be bigger than it was in 2021. I don't think there's that strong precautionary. I know you mentioned that you guys are downsizing a little bit on your booth, but I think you'll see there's more people coming back. I don't know if I can say on the air. There are a few brands that have been missing from the past couple of trade shows in the industry that will be making their return to PCA this summer. It's probably not too hard to figure out, but I'm still not going to say it until I know for sure.
Yeah,
Because I
I
don't
know
know.
exactly what you're talking about.
I don't know if it's public knowledge, but there's some people coming back. So, and we're very, very excited for that. So I think you're going to see more of that too, and which is good for everyone. It's good for the industry. It's good for the trade show. It's good for PCA. Everyone coming back. It's always great to have everyone together. Glenn, I don't know if I asked you. You had mentioned before that right before we were getting started, you want to top off your drink. What are you drinking?
This is a little vodka and diet squirt.
Diet Squirt. Okay, so vodka. Interesting. So are you primarily a vodka guy? Are you a whiskey guy at all? Scotch, bourbon?
Uh, Day to day, it's just a vodka and diet squirt, but I definitely enjoy a good bourbon, a whiskey, um, blended scotches.
Yeah.
So yeah,
What would you say your favorite pairing is with a cigar?
wow. So it's all personal preference, right? And I get this asked a lot. What should I smoke with this cigar? Or what should I, smoke with or drink with this cigar? It's all personal preference. There's no right or wrong. So depending on what I'm smoking, honestly, vodka and diet squirt's very refreshing. It kind of blends well with everything for me. But if I'm smoking like the GC Signature, which is big espresso, coffee bean, kind of a mixed berry note in there, a nice blended scotch works for me. But it's all personal preference, and there's no right or wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. It totally is. It's very interesting to hear someone mention vodka. I don't think I've had anyone on the show mention vodka before. It's always the usual suspects, right? It's always whiskey, scotch, bourbon,
Mhm.
and then you get, there's the few wine people like Michael Herklotz loves wine. John Carney loves wine. You get um, the rum, the hardcore Dominicans. I gotta have the rum in the cigar. Get that. You have the people like Kurt Kendall who love tequila. But he
Mhm.
loves whiskey too, but he loves tequila. So you get one of the things that he said when he was on was tequila. And he's really into different, barrel aged tequilas and stuff like that. I can kind of see that one too. But vodka is an interesting one. But you're right, it is light. And when you're smoking a cigar, vodka is nice. I don't drink a lot of vodka myself, but vodka, that's an interesting take because it is such a light drink that
Mhm.
you have to imagine being very nice and light and cleansing on the palate too while you're smoking a cigar.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It's sort of a palate cleanser, right? So it works for me.
And the
So
and on like whiskey and all that stuff's good too, but that has its own really strong flavor component to it, when you're smoking a cigar that can maybe overpower the cigar flavor, or just it can kind of go several different ways. But vodka is an interesting touch because it won't really take anything away. It'll cleanse the palate, but it won't really take away from your flavor, sensory in your mouth while you're smoking. It won't overpower the cigar flavor. It's there. It cleanses. It doesn't do too much. I don't know why. I just really intrigued by that because I never really thought about vodka that much. And like I said, no one really ever brings that up. It's always the more stronger, flavorful stuff that
Right.
people always get into, which is
Unless you're Jared, who's our executive VP of sales, who drinks straight Tito's. So, he's the fun one to talk to about pairings.
yeah. You know what? It's funny now that you mentioned that. He may have mentioned that because he was on here not too long ago. But he may be the only other one, and maybe that's why I forgot. But that would make sense. Getting back to cigars, getting back to Kristoff as a brand, I'm keeping an eye on the clock too. I don't want to keep it too late. One of the things I had mentioned to you before that I really enjoyed about Kristoff is the consistency and the quality and the detail. What kind of quality control measures have you set in place yourself for the cigars and the brand that have worked out and has kept the brand so consistent, and it's just such a great quality time and time again?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, our business mantra is quality, consistency, and availability. The availability part, as we had mentioned before, has been a challenge for everyone for the last 2.5 years with COVID. But the quality and consistency is incredibly important. So on the quality side, we use a bunching technique called entubar, which is a very traditional Cuban method of bunching a cigar. So it's basically all the fillers individually tubed or scrolled versus a booking technique, which helps with the burn, the draw. In addition to that, we also draw test every single cigar, which is, to me, is critical. You don't want to fight with a cigar, whether it's the draw is too hard or too light. So we draw test every single cigar. The other thing is we double and triple ferment all of our tobacco, which, for me, it's critically important. So we're purchasing tobacco from our suppliers. They process it, they age it. It should be ready to go, but we continue to double and triple ferment it to give it that smoothness without that bite, that bitterness, that aftertaste. So that's incredibly important to us as well. The other thing is the supervisors and the rollers and the bunchers are encouraged to be smoking every day, all day long, because that's our first line of defense, right? So if they're making a cigar, and as they bunch them, and then after they're pressed and they roll them, they should be smoking them, and they're the first line of defense to say, hey, something's a little off here. So that's incredibly important to us as well.
Yeah, and in the last, year and a half, with everything that's been going on, and like you kind of lightly touched on with product availability and the demand and all that stuff, one of the things we have seen from some manufacturers, not Kristoff, not Kristoff, but with some manufacturers, we've definitely seen that quality control slip a little bit because people are just trying to keep up with demand. They're trying to keep inventory moving. Some corners are being cut, and I'm not going to mention names either. This is not what this is about, but it's out there. We've seen it. Some manufacturers, and you know what? There's manufacturers out there doing it that I'm sure that they don't want to, and everyone kind of has their strategy. Like, hey, look, we're just trying to do whatever we can to keep the business going, because everyone's business, situation is different regardless of kind of where they're at. So, but it's always great when manufacturers, like Kristoff and a bunch of the others, they've been able to get through those times and combat those situations without having to decrease on the level of quality and the consistency of the product. That ultimately it's not good for anyone, and it's disappointing when you have a brand that's been good for so long, and then all of a sudden, whether it's the situation like the pandemic or something else, there's a certain type of tobacco shortage, and then the specific line that they make, like all of a sudden that starts to decline because of other factors, and they're trying to kind of cheat the system a little bit. They're just trying to get the cigars out because people want them, and it really is kind of a big deal. And I always bring this up because it is special, and it's important because it shows how a brand can really pivot and say, you know what, like, I understand that there's huge demand. I understand there's not a lot of them, but we're gonna take the time to get it right. And so when you do finally get them, they're still gonna be the same. They're not gonna be any less. Or some manufacturers have just been able to make the moving pieces work so that they don't have shortages, but they also can kind of combat, in terms of they don't have shortages in the product line when it gets to the retailer. But they plan ahead. They do other things so that way that they have an abundance. Some manufacturers talk about having an abundance of tobaccos or cigars already rolled and stuff like that. Then being ahead of schedule to combat those situations, which has been good. In terms of that, outside of just the quality, during the pandemic time, in terms of the whole picture, not just quality, as I said, how did Kristoff really combat and plan and just kind of play the game the right way to navigate through the massive boom and the demand and all the other things, and then obviously with factories being closed or at very limited capacity for a short amount of time, which can have both short-term and long-term effects on the supply line. How did Kristoff really handle that situation to get through it as well as they seem to have? I don't know if it really was that way, but it seemed to be, at least from the outside, done pretty well.
Right. Well, I think it gets back to that mantra, the quality, consistency, and the last point where you're making, Matthew, is availability, right? So rather than trying to work on a lot of different blends and new SKUs, and it's like, look, we've got a shortage in the market, a supply chain issue. Let's just focus on what we've got and try to regroup and get back into the swing of things to meet the demand that's out there. And I think we've done a really good job at that. It doesn't mean we don't have issues, but I think we're in a better position than a lot of people. And so it's just really focusing on that, sticking with the knitting. And once the factories opened up and we got back to full production, and then working 6 days a week versus 5 days a week, just getting back to where we need to be to correct the availability issue and the supply chain issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said. And now I'm keeping an eye. So I know you have to go soon, so I don't want to keep it too much longer. I don't know how much time you do have left. I know you mentioned you had to be. Do you have to be out by 7:15 or?
I've got another probably 10 minutes.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure.
I apologize.
No, it's okay. I apologize too, because I mean the starting of the show got messed up, but that's not just on you. That's on me too. So, but I also don't want to make you late for anything either. So I just want to make sure. But kind of getting towards the end of the show for tonight, and again, shorter show, but looking ahead to the future, even like past PCA, just in general for the company, for the brand, what are some things that you would like to maybe see happen within the next 5 years? Where do you see Kristoff go in the next 5 years? Maybe certain accomplishments you've had your eye on for a while that you want to do with the brand, bring it to a new height, whether it's cigars in the line or just coverage or whatever it is. What is kind of your 5-year plan for the brand at this point?
Right. So the plan is to continue to grow, obviously, and we've seen tremendous growth in the last 2.5 years, and that's both nationally and internationally. We're roughly in about 40 other countries outside the U.S. We continue to see that grow. So I'd like to, we've got our plan to continue to grow internationally, but also nationally. And again, we've been blessed with that. It's been going very well. And that's probably the goal for most manufacturers, most brand owners, obviously. But we'll continue with a good team that we've got, the family at Kristoff, They're the ones that are going to get us there. And we just had our strategic planning meeting back in early February. So we're working on a few things. And again, once the supply chain issue kind of corrects itself and production's back to where we need to be to get caught up with the demand of Kristoff, you're going to see a lot more new stuff coming out.
Absolutely. It'll be exciting to watch that happen too. Like I said, Kristoff is it's definitely one of my favorite brands. It's one of the first brands I ever had, and it's always been good. It's always been consistent, which is a nice quality to have. It's a good reputation to have, especially in this industry too. So it'll of course be exciting to see you guys continue to grow and see what else you guys do. I'm gonna kind of wrap it up there. I don't want to go too much longer. I have a couple announcements to make too, so I'm just gonna relay those off and then we'll kind of get off here. First thing I wanted to say is I can officially say, I think we mentioned it before, but I'm really gonna start to really enforce it. March 28th, Monday. It's a Monday. Monday, March 28th at I believe 9 a.m. We are going to set it for. The Cigar Family Charitable Foundation Smokin Tabacco fundraiser will be kicking off for 2022, and that is when the raffle will go live. The raffle tickets will be available. They will be $5 a ticket once again, and there is a slew of crazy prizes that will be involved in that, with all of the proceeds going to Cigar Family Charitable Foundation. Last year we raised $7,000 for those amazing kids in the Dominican Republic. And every dollar counts, and it really goes a long way. And the Fuente and Newman families really appreciate it. The kids really appreciate it. We appreciate it. We were really honored to be a part of that. You know, I was talking to Nicole after it, and I was like, we got to do this again. It was just so special to be involved in such a great cause. So just letting everyone know, there will be a formal announcement online. There will be more information. But definitely keep your eye out for that. Mark it on your calendar. March 28th. 9 a.m. It's a Monday. Don't miss it. It's going live. We're doing it again. There's awesome stuff being raffled off. But once again, the goal is to beat that $7,000 that we raised last year for Cigar Family Charitable Foundation. Always just a pleasure to be involved in that. Always, as always, you can find us on YouTube and at smokintabacco.com, where you can find all of our other social media links. You can find all of our other content and the haps of what's going on. We didn't get to our segments tonight. I decided to keep the show really short just because of Glen's time. So I just want to mention our sponsors, J.C. Newman Cigar Co. We are in the J.C. Newman Cigar Studios tonight, as well as McAuliffe Cigars and Room 101 Cigars, as well as TwoGuysCigars.com. Two Guys Cigars is a carrier of the Kristoff brand. They carry a huge portion of the collection. I don't think they have all the cigars, but they have a huge portion of the collection. So don't forget to head over to TwoGuysCigars.com to grab some Kristoff cigars today. That's the number 2, GuysCigars.com. And with that, I'm going to wrap up the show right here. Shorter show, I know. Glen, I really appreciate you coming on with us tonight. Unfortunately, it was a little bit of a rocky start, but we toughed it out, and we still made it. We got here. We had a conversation, maybe not as long as we'd hoped for, but we had one. And I appreciate your time, and it's always great to see you. And I look forward to seeing you later this year at PCA.
Matthew, thank you for having me on. It's truly an honor, and I appreciate you guys and all that you do. And so, just thank you. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anything we can ever do to help Kristoff. And all of the brands that we work with too. We really appreciate it, and we'd love to do it because we love you guys as well, and you guys do a great job. So it truly is a pleasure. Guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening at home, and we'll see you next week. Take care.